Hey, Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach. Happy Feast of Sukkot for those of you who are keeping it this time. Today, for Return of the Remnant, we're going to talk about Revelation chapter 8. There's only 13 verses in this chapter, and although I entitled this The Seven Trumpet Judgments, this is going to be a two-part teaching. We're going to only go through the first four trumpets today, and hopefully next week or very soon, I will try and do a part two in Revelation chapter 9, where we get into the other trumpet judgments. Now, as I've said in the past, John saw some things over 2,000 years ago that he tried to take what he saw and put to pen and paper in his language of the day of Hebrew, which then was copied into Greek and then Latin in some cases, and then into English. And so it is very, very difficult for us to try and understand fully what he saw. But I feel as we get closer to these end days, as I said before, I believe end time prophecy is something very fluid and we have to stay humble, and we have to continue to look at the scriptures with the information we're given at that time. And as information develops down the road, that we may have to change our thought process. And so today I'm going to give you one of my thought processes, and this is a recent one as I've been going through, as I said before, the Hebrew Revelation. I've seen some things that I think you're going to find interesting. Now, again, this is only my opinion, but the whole purpose of this study is to make each one of us think and to come up with possibilities and maybe help us with some understanding that maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago, 400 years ago, when others gave us their understanding, that we may be able to draw a bigger and more clear and perfect picture of what's going on. But we're not going to be perfect. We're just trying to learn. We're trying to get closer to the understanding what John saw. So today, as I said, I'm going to get into the Hebrew Revelation book, and I'll again put that link on Amazon. And I'm also going to read out of my NASB. I'm going to read both versions because I think by reading both versions here in this particular place, you're going to see something, especially if you've been through the Torah and gone through the Tanakh and gone through the Bible a few times. You're going to pick up on some things. And so I don't want to give a spoiler alert just yet. So I'm going to go through it. I'm going to read this. You can follow along if you want. And please put some comments down on things that we're talking about today of what you see. So that's how we can all learn. So I'm going to go ahead and read chapter 8, verse 1 through 13 in the Hebrew text. And then I'm going to immediately go to the NASB, and I'm going to read chapter 8, 1 through 13 in that version. So here we go. And when he opened the seventh, so this would be the seventh seal, all of them in the heavens were silent for a moment. And I saw 7 messengers coming before Yahweh, and 7 shofarot were given to them. And another messenger came and stepped next to the temple, and golden fire pans were in his hand. And much incense was given to him to give it as the prayer of the set apart ones before the temple, even before the throne. And the smoke of the incense of the set apart ones, holy ones, went up from the hand of the messenger before Yahweh. Then the messenger took the fire pan and filled it with fire and poured it out on the earth. And there came voices and thunders and lightnings. And the 7 messengers with the 7 shofarot were ready to blow. Then the first messenger blew, and there was hail and fire mixed with blood, and it fell on the earth. And 1/3 of the trees were burned up, and all the green plants of the field were burned up. Then the second blew, and there was something like a great mountain burning with fire, and it went into the sea, and 1/3 of the sea was blood, and 1/3 of the creatures of the sea died, and 1/3 of the ships sank. Verse 10. Then the third blew, and a star fell from the heavens, and it was burning, and it fell on 1/3 of the wells of water. And the name of the star was Tolat. And 1/3 of the waters were bitter. and many sons of man died by means of the waters because of their bitterness. Then the fourth blew, and there was stricken a third of the sun and the moon and stars, and a third of the day did not shine, and also the night. Then I saw and heard a messenger flying in the heavens, and he cried out with a great voice, Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, because of the sound of the shofarot, which the three messengers still have to blow. And I want to just read one more verse in Revelation 9. And if I get to it, I'll try to explain something. Then the fifth messenger blew, and I saw a star falling onto the earth from the heavens, and to him the key of the deep was given. Okay, so that ends this translation, the reading. Now I'm going to read out of the NASB, and if you've got a King James, ESV, NIV, any of those versions, there's probably going to be very similar what I'm going to read here. But I want to read both of them so you get a full picture of what I want to try and share. Chapter 8, verse 1, NASB. When the Lamb opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the seven angels who stand before Elohim, and seven trumpets were given to them. Another angel with a golden censer came and stood at the altar. He was given a great quantity of incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar that is before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from Elohim, from the hand of the angel. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth. And there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. Now the seven angels who had the seven trumpets made ready to blow them. The first angel blew his trumpet. There came hail and fire mixed with blood, and they were hurled to the earth, and a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain, burning with fire, was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea became blood, a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Verse 10. The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many died from the water because it was made bitter. The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light was darkened. A third of the day was kept from shining, and likewise the night. Then I looked, and I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew in mid-heaven, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth at the blast of the other trumpets that the three angels are about to blow. Chapter 9, verse 1. And the fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from heaven to earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. I'll end it there. So, a lot going on. Now I'm going to try and break this down. So we see at the beginning of chapter 8 some things going on in the heavens. And before I get to that, I want to show you there are some patterns here that I see between the trumpets and the seals. And later, you're going to see patterns between the trumpets and the bowls of wrath. But if you take a look here, the trumpets that I read, and I didn't read all the trumpets, but you'll see as we get next week into the last three trumpets, how they're similar to that of the seals. So today we read the four trumpets. They were all pretty much grouped together. Next week, or whenever I can get to this, we're going to see in detail in chapter 9, the fifth and sixth trumpets. The fifth and sixth trumpets, which are the first and second woes. And I kind of messed this up here. I don't know how I did this, but I'll make it understandable here. So the trumpets, we had the first four trumpets with the seals. These trumpets were grouped together. when we read the seals back in Revelation chapter 6, they were the first 4 horsemen. Next week, we're going to read the 5th and 6th trumpets, I hope anyway, next week, which are the first and second woes. And then the seals are a little different. The seals speak more of Yah's people, with the persecution of them as seal 5 and the sealing of them in seal 6. Now, I got these two down here backwards. I don't know how I did it. But later, we're going to see a break with the trumpets. So come down over here to the right with chapter 10 and 11, where there's an interlude here with a little scroll that John's given, a measuring of the temple, and also about the 2 witnesses. We read earlier and last week, there was an interlude in chapter 7 with the sealing of the 12 tribes, which I believe Dan's included, of the 144,000. And then we read towards the end of that chapter, the mixed multitude, if you will, like in Exodus 12, verse 40, but a great multitude of overcomers who came out of the tribulation. And then we're going to read later on the 7th trumpet, which is the third woe, and that judgment has come, and there's judgment, but then there's also a reward for the saints. For the seals, seal 7, there's silence in heaven, whether it's for a short time or for half an hour, whatever it is. And then there's Yah's judgment. So I feel bad that I didn't get these two flipped. I should have proofread that before, but you get the idea that there are patterns here between the trumpets and the seals. That's the main thing I wanted to get at. I'll give you a little bit better thing here to just kind of give you the layers here. So what we see when we're reading Revelation, it can be basically broken up into 3 parts. And each of these 3 parts have either the seals, which is the sealing of Yah's people. Then we have the trumpets. There's an interlude in each one of these. And then there's the trumpets, which are the judgments of Yah, followed by an interlude. Then there is the vials, or the wrath, I like to call it. And each one of these have an interlude of the throne room. So you can say we have the seals, the trumpets, or the vials, but what do they represent? The seals represent the sealing of Yah's people. The trumpets represent God's judgment on the earth. Also judgment in the heavens, because he does say that in Isaiah, that I'm going to roll the heavens up like a scroll. And we're going to read about it later when we get to Revelation 12. And then we also see the vials, which is the wrath of God. So hopefully that makes some sense. I'll give credit where credit's due. This came from a YouTube video from Nelson Walters, but I really liked his PowerPoint picture here, so it just made it easy for me to put that in there. So that is the layer, and that's also a pattern. So let's continue. So the big question is, and it's, if you read Revelation, you know who it is, okay? But who is the dragon? Who is the dragon of Revelation? And I'm hoping now to spend some time to give you an understanding what I'm coming up with here, and then I'll give you a whole summary of it here at the end. But we know later on when we get into Revelation 12, we're going to see that there is a dragon. And Revelation 12 is almost all about the dragon and the fall of the dragon, and the dragon making war against the saints of God. So we have plenty of clues, and we also have an answer. But if we look here, Revelation 12:3, I'm just going to give you what I see here because I want to try and equate this back to a trumpet. Revelation 12:3 is described as a great dragon. In this text, I don't believe it says, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. let's just stay with this for a minute. Slow down, Chad. So Revelation 12:3, we read about a great dragon, a red dragon. And it has crowns on its head and diadems. So that's representing authority and rulership. Revelation 12:4, the dragon is not a creature per se. It is a he or a him. And this dragon was in heaven, according to verse 4, Revelation 12. Revelation 12:7, it says that this dragon has a host of angels with him. And these angels are also considered stars. In verse 9, we read this very dragon was cast out of heaven along with the angels that sided with him. And he is literally called the devil and HaSatan. When we get into Revelation 13 a few weeks from now, we're going to see that this dragon, who is the devil and HaSatan, is going to give his authority to the beast. And he has that authority to give, because we know in the Gospels there's a time during the 40 days of temptation that the dragon, aka Satan, aka the devil, was tempting Yeshua and saying, hey, look, all these kingdoms have been given to me, and I can give them to whoever I choose if you just bow to me. And we know Yeshua wasn't going to have any of that. But Yeshua did not question the authority that Satan was given, because it was given by Yeshua's father. Okay. Then we also read in Revelation 13:4 that the dragon is worshipped. Satan is worshipped because he gave his power and his authority to the beast on the earth. He gave it to him. And who's the beast here? Well, we'll find out later that the beast is none other than the Antichrist. Okay, so we got that figured out. If we go back to Genesis 3, verse 1, we know that the serpent, it says in Genesis 3:1 that the serpent was very cunning. Okay. In Hebrew, the serpent here is translated in Hebrew as Nakash. In the Greek Septuagint, it is translated as Ophis. Now, both of these words can mean a serpent or a snake-like creature. But in ancient cultures, the snake or the serpent represented very high intellect and hidden wisdom and knowledge. And the Hebrew word Nakash in its simplest form can mean shining one. So keep that in mind. You know, this was not literally a snake that came before Eve. I mean, it was standing, because later we read in Genesis 3 that on your belly you shall go. So it wasn't on its belly before. It was standing, and it. So anyway, I don't want to get into all that because I want to get back to the trumpets. But this serpent here, this Nakash, is the one that deceived Adam and Eve in the garden to cause the fall of mankind and allow man's sin to enter into the world, as Paul tells us in Romans 5:12. Paul also understood the serpent of Genesis 3. And 2 Corinthians 11:3, he says, but I fear, he's speaking to the people of Corinth, but I fear lest by any means as the serpent, the Nachash, Satan, aka the devil, HaSatan, beguiled Eve in his craftiness. Your mind should be corrupted from the simplicity and the purity that is toward Mashiach, towards Messiah. We also know later in Revelation 20 that this serpent that tried to fool the whole world, it says that one of the angels, I believe, in Revelation 20, he laid hold of the dragon, the old, and in this case, the old meaning original, the original or the ancient Nachash, Ophis, the ancient serpent of old. And they equate that to the devil and Satan and bound him for 1,000 years. So I beat that dead horse to death again because I want you to see about this dragon and how this dragon is a great red dragon, a fiery dragon. I believe that the third trumpet that we read about in Revelation 8 is none other than the fall of Satan. And I'm going to try and give you the reasoning behind it. I wanted you to understand that we know Revelation 12 are the details. We normally read events first in Revelation, just like we did a couple weeks ago. We read Revelation 6 and it gave us events. And later you're going to see details concerning those events. And here we're seeing we're seeing events of the trumpets. And later we're going to see some further details going with these events that we see in Revelation chapter 8. So I'm going to get to the third angel. So the third angel blew his trumpet. This is verse 10. That's why I kind of stopped to discuss this a little bit. And it says, not just a star, but a great star fell from heaven. And we know there is a great red dragon that fell from heaven. And that great red dragon in Revelation 12 is equated to Satan. So I'm going to throw that out. Could it be the same? I think it is. May it not be? I don't know. It might not be. But I want you to think about this for a minute. The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch. And it fell on the third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. Now, we may not understand that in this translation, but to me, it was an aha moment when I read that part in the Hebrew. When I read the Hebrew revelation, that says that he is the Tolat, because Tolat in Hebrew means red. It also means fiery. So here I have some clues. Stars in Revelation. Several times we read about stars in Revelation. These things that fall from heaven are not huge balls of gases of suns, S-U-N, that would totally destroy and engulf the earth if we look at that type of science. And so to me, the stars that we read about in Revelation, for the most part, so far anyway, I believe they relate to the angels in the heavenly bodies. And it says a great star fell from heaven. And Revelation 12, when we get to it, there's a chiastic structure in there. And I'm going to go in, I'm going to show that, Lucifer, Satan, he fell from heaven and he was a great star. He was an original. He was one of the original Nachash, very powerful. That's why it's a great star. And when you look in the Greek, there's another Bible out there called the Apostolic Biblical Polyglot, where they use the Greek Septuagint words and they use the Greek Textus Receptus, and they use they want to look at the Greek. So if Yeshua is speaking something in Greek, and they may be able to pinpoint it back into the Septuagint to see how that flows together with also how the Hebrew is in the Old Testament. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that. I just want to explain this to you here. So the star has a name. So according to Greek, it's absinthium. According to the English, that's rendered from the Greek, we get wormwood, and it flows because it's bitter. The waters are bitter. But tolat means red, and we also know that there's red. If there's red in the water, it usually has something to do with a high mineral or a high, I don't remember, whether it's iron, I think it is, where it makes the water undrinkable. So scientifically, we could show that. We could show that, okay, the water is red. But I'm seeing something different here. I'm seeing something very, very different here. We can use our scientific mind to see, okay, hey, maybe there's a star that did fall from heaven, even though it is an angel, but he did something to the water. He made it bitter, and it's undrinkable. and many people died. Okay, I can buy that, but I want to throw a couple other ideas out to you. Could it be what says, and many died from the water because it was made bitter? Could this have anything to do? We have a couple stories in the Torah that deal with this, that deal with water being bitter. One is the sin of the golden calf, and how Moshe ground the golden calf into dust, threw it in the water, and people drank it. They became bitter. Those that followed after the golden calf, just like following after the Antichrist, and those that were bitter died from the bitter waters. Could it also be a test for God's people, like Numbers chapter 5? Okay, with the spirit of jealousy in the bitter waters that the woman had to drink, and if there was no guilt found in her, no problem. If there was guilt found in her, she would eventually die from the bitter waters. So keep that in mind. That's another thought. So now, as I hope I'm tracking with you here, or I should say, I hope you're tracking with me. So this red fiery tolat, name of this angel, in Hebrew, the red in the water could cause bitterness, but we also see what equated for me was the tolat being red, and finding out that the dragon of Revelation 12, in the NASB anyway, and in other translations, says this is a great red dragon with authority, fell from heaven. And oh, by the way, when we read Revelation 12, which I believe are the details of this trumpet, part of the details anyway, there was a third of the stars that went with them. And don't you think a third of the stars, also the angels, the third of the angels that went with them, were also bitter? And could it be, I'm going to give you a different rendering of this verse, Chad's paraphrase translation, loosely. Only my opinion. Don't kill the messenger. The third angel blew his trumpet, and Satan fell from heaven, blazing like a torch. And he and his angels came down on earth, and his name is Tolat. And a third of his angels were bitter, and many died from the angels because of the bitterness they had towards mankind. Again, just a thought. I'm just throwing it out there. It could be very, very way out there, but I don't think anyone else has looked at it this way that I've seen on YouTube or anywhere else. But it could very well be that this third angel that blew his trumpet was the time of a battle that happened. Or it could be the second, third, and fourth could all be about this great battle, because I believe the second trumpet, when it talks about a great mountain burning with fire thrown into the sea, I believe that's a kingdom. I think that's a kingdom, whether it's Satan's kingdom was thrown into the sea, or, I don't believe it was a literal mountain, because a lot of times mountains can be equated to kingdoms. Just another thought that could be way off base. And that's why I say, take this with a grain of salt. I'm only trying to share what I'm seeing here, and I want you to look at it and give me your opinion, give me your take on it. So let's see if I have anything else on this. And then we're also going to read later, and this is why I include Revelation chapter 9, verse 1. I believe that this same star from the third trumpet that fell and came down to earth, I don't believe it's this Apophis or Planet X or whatever. I mean, there could be something going on that could be these other trumpets, or from the wrath. I don't know. But I believe in this context of scripture that we're reading, this has to do with Satan and his angels, his kingdom, a lot of things like that going on. But look at chapter 9, verse 1. The fifth angel blew his trumpet. So we had our third, then our fourth, now our fifth. I saw a star that had fallen. It didn't just fall. It had already fallen. It was already on the earth, and it was given the key to the bottomless pit. So could it be that this key was given to the star, the fallen angel, who was a great angel, aka the great red dragon, aka Satan, and Satan was the one that opened the key to the bottomless shaft? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, guys. So again, don't kill the messenger. But I believe that, again, I wanted to beat this. I wanted to drive this home, and I hope I'm doing a good enough job explaining it. I don't know if I have any more slides here. Let's just see. Yeah, that's it. But I wanted to try and make this thematic connection and this correlation between these trumpets, especially trumpet number 3. And the only way, I think, the only way you're going to see that is you find out that that third trumpet is an angel, and that angel is a great angel, and it has a name, and the name of that star / angel is Tolat. But the Tolat means red or fiery in Hebrew. And we have in Revelation 12 a great red dragon that is none other than HaSatan, Lucifer, HaSatan, the devil. So that is all I have for you this week. This will make you think. And again, if you have any comments, suggestions, likes, hit all that down below. Otherwise, I'm going to try and see you next week, if not very shortly. Until then, may you have a happy Sukkot and a good Sabbath.